The Vigilant Claw was a warship that had seen many battles, and its captain had the scars to prove it. Vortash stood on the bridge with his arms crossed behind his back, watching the stars drift past the viewport as his ship traveled through neutral space. His golden eyes narrowed when he thought about the passenger they carried, a human female named Maya Chun, assigned to his vessel as part of some foolish alliance initiative that the High Command had approved without asking his opinion. He did not trust humans. Nobody with any sense trusted humans. The stories about them spread through every corner of the galaxy like a disease. They were pursuit predators who could chase their prey for days without rest. They bonded with anything, even dangerous beasts and broken machines. They had conquered their own world through pure stubborn refusal to die. And now they wanted to be friends with the Felixari? Vortash let out a low growl from deep in his throat. He was a warrior of the old ways, and he knew that friendship was just another word for an alliance of convenience, one that would last only until the humans decided they wanted something the Felixari had. His first officer, Mirakel, approached with soft footsteps. She was younger than him by many cycles, and she had not yet learned to be properly suspicious of outsiders. Her silver fur caught the light from the control panels as she stood beside him. "Captain, the human has requested access to the observation deck again," she reported in a calm voice. "She says she finds the view calming. Let her look at the stars if she wishes." Vortash replied without turning his head. "It keeps her out of important areas of the ship. The crew is still uncomfortable around her," Mirakel continued. "They avoid her in the corridors and refuse to sit near her in the dining hall." "Good. That shows they have proper instincts." Mirakel hesitated for a moment before speaking again. "She seems lonely, Captain. I have watched her, and she does not appear dangerous. She smiles too much and speaks too softly for a predator species. That is exactly what makes her dangerous." Vortash finally turned to face his first officer. The humans did not conquer their world through strength alone. They used deception, manipulation, and patience. A human who appears harmless is the most dangerous kind of all. He had read the intelligence reports. Humans could form emotional bonds in a matter of hours. They could make other species feel comfortable and safe, and then use those feelings against them. It was a terrifying ability that no other known species possessed to such a degree. Down in the lower decks, Maya Chun sat alone in her small quarters, looking at a photo of her family back on Earth. She missed them terribly, but she had volunteered for this mission because she believed that building bridges between species was important work. The Felixari were beautiful and proud, with their soft fur and their large expressive ears that moved to show their emotions. Maya thought they looked like the cats she had grown up with on Earth, although she would never say that out loud because she suspected it might be insulting. She wished they would talk to her more. In the 3 weeks since she had come aboard, she had managed only a handful of brief conversations with crew members, and most of those had ended with the Felixari making excuses and hurrying away. The children were different, though. There were 6 cubs on the ship, belonging to various crew members who had brought their families along for this extended diplomatic voyage. The cubs did not share their parents' fear of the strange alien with no claws or fur. Instead, they stared at Maya with huge, curious eyes whenever she passed them in the corridors. Just yesterday, the smallest one, a little female with orange and white patches on her fur, had tugged on Maya's sleeve and asked why her skin was so smooth. Maya had laughed and explained that humans did not grow fur, and the cub had looked at her with such pure amazement that Maya's heart had melted completely. She hoped that someday the adult Felixari would look at her with curiosity instead of fear. An alarm began to sound throughout the ship, and Maya jumped to her feet. She rushed out of her quarters to find crew members running past her with worried expressions. Something was wrong with one of the ship's systems. She made her way to a common area where several parents had gathered with their cubs. The children looked frightened by all the noise and activity, and their parents were trying to comfort them while also listening to updates on their communication devices. A harried-looking Felixari officer spotted Maya and hurried over to her. "Human, the communal nursery system has malfunctioned, and we need all available personnel to help with repairs. The parents must report to their stations, but someone needs to watch the cubs." Maya's eyes widened. "I can do it. I am good with children. I used to take care of my younger cousins all the time." The officer looked uncertain, glancing at the cubs and then back at Maya. The captain would need to approve this, then ask him quickly. Those parents need to get to their stations, and the cubs need someone to keep them calm and safe. The officer spoke rapidly into his communication device, and Maya could hear Captain Vartash's deep voice responding. She could not understand the words because they were speaking too fast for the translator, but she saw the officer's ears flatten against his head in surprise. "The captain has approved your request," the officer said, looking at Maya with new interest. "He says you are to take the cubs to the observation deck and keep them there until the repairs are complete. He also says," the officer paused as if not sure he had heard correctly. "He says that surveillance will be monitoring you at all times." Maya felt a small sting at that last part, but she pushed it aside. At least she was being trusted with something important, even if that trust came with conditions. She knelt down to meet the cubs at eye level, smiling warmly at their nervous little faces. "Hello there, little ones. My name is Maya, and we are going to have a wonderful time together while your parents fix the ship. Does that sound good?" The cubs looked at each other, their ears twitching with uncertainty. Then the smallest one, the orange and white female, stepped forward and placed her tiny paw in Maya's hand. "I am called Kira," she said in a small voice. "Will you tell us stories about your world?" Maya's smile grew even wider. "I will do even better than that. I will show you something amazing." She had no idea that her next actions would change everything the Felixari believed about humanity, and she certainly had no idea that the captain was watching her every move with growing horror. Maya led the 6 cubs through the corridors of the Vigilant Claw, holding little Kira's paw in one hand while the other 5 followed close behind. Their ears swiveled in every direction as they walked, picking up the sounds of crew members rushing to repair the malfunctioning systems. "Where are we going?" asked a larger cub named Torvik, who had dark brown fur and a white patch over one eye. He was trying to act brave, but Maya could see his tail twitching nervously. "First, we are going to my quarters to pick up something special," Maya replied in a cheerful voice. "Then, we will go to the observation deck where we can see the stars." The cubs had never been inside a human's living space before, and they crowded around the doorway with wide eyes when Maya opened it. Her quarters were small but cozy, filled with colorful items that looked completely alien to the young Felixari. "What is that?" Kira pointed at a stuffed teddy bear sitting on Maya's bed. "That is a toy from my world. It is made to look like an animal called a bear." "Is a bear dangerous?" asked another cub, a female with gray striped fur named Sella. "Very dangerous. Bears on Earth are huge and powerful, with long claws and sharp teeth." The cubs looked at the soft, smiling teddy bear with new respect. Maya knelt down and pulled a large trunk from under her bed. It was an old thing, covered in stickers and patches from her travels, and it made a satisfying click when she opened the latches. "What is in there?" Torvik asked, craning his neck to see. "Treasures," Maya said with a mysterious smile. "Wonderful treasures from Earth." She lifted the lid, and the cubs gasped. Inside the trunk was an explosion of color. Silk scarves in every shade of the rainbow. Costume jewelry that sparkled and glittered. Feather boas and sequin capes. Plastic tiaras and crowns. Funny hats and fancy gloves. Face paint in dozens of bright colors. and costumes that ranged from princess dresses to superhero capes to dragon wings. Maya had packed all of this for morale purposes, thinking that maybe she could teach the crew some human games or put on a show for them. She had never imagined that she would be using it to entertain a group of alien children. "These are so beautiful." Sella reached out with trembling paws to touch a purple velvet cape. "What are they for?" "They are for playing dress-up," Maya explained. On Earth, children put on special clothes and pretend to be different things. You can be a princess or a knight or a dragon or anything you can imagine. The cubs looked confused. "But why would you pretend to be something you are not?" asked a quiet cub named Milo, who had been hanging back from the group. Maya thought about how to explain. "Because it is fun. When you put on a costume, you can be anyone you want to be. You can be brave when you feel scared or powerful when you feel small. It is a way to imagine all the wonderful things you might become someday." The cubs still looked uncertain, so Maya decided to show them instead of telling them. She pulled out a silver tiara covered in fake diamonds and placed it carefully on Kira's head. "There. Now you are a princess, a noble ruler of a great kingdom." Kira's ears perked straight up with delight. She reached up to touch the tiara, and her whole face lit up with joy. "I am a princess?" she asked in wonder. "The most beautiful princess in all the galaxy," Maya confirmed. "And every princess needs a royal wave. Here, let me show you." She demonstrated the slow, graceful wave that queens and princesses used in parades on Earth. The gentle rotation of the wrist, the slight tilt of the head, the serene smile. Kira copied the gesture, and she did it perfectly. Her little paw moved through the air with natural grace, and the other cubs watched with amazement. "I want to be something too," Torvik demanded. Maya grinned and pulled out a red cape with a gold clasp. She fastened it around his shoulders and handed him a plastic sword. "You are now a brave knight, sworn to protect the kingdom." Torvik's chest puffed up with pride. He raised the sword and struck a heroic pose. Within minutes, all 6 cubs were transformed. Sella wore dragon wings and a green mask, stalking around the room with playful growls. Milo had been wrapped in a wizard's robe covered in stars and moons, and he waved a sparkly wand at imaginary enemies. The twins, Asha and Nico, had demanded to be matching superheroes, so Maya had given them capes and masks in blue and red. But the transformation was not complete without face paint. Maya sat the cubs down one by one and decorated their faces with swirls and stars and hearts. She put glitter on their fur until they sparkled like the stars outside the viewport. She painted whiskers on some and crowns on others, and each cub examined their reflection in Maya's small mirror with absolute delight. "We are so beautiful," Asha exclaimed, twirling in her cape. "You were always beautiful," Maya said warmly. "The costumes just help you see it." They made their way to the observation deck, and the cubs strutted through the corridors with their heads held high. Crew members stopped to stare at the strange procession 6 glittering, costumed cubs led by a smiling human. On the observation deck, with the stars stretching out endlessly before them, Maya taught the cubs how to play pretend. They acted out stories that Maya made up on the spot. With Princess Kira ruling her kingdom wisely, Knight Torvik defending against Dragon Sella, Wizard Milo casting spells of protection, and the superhero twins saving the day again and again. The cubs learned to bow and curtsy. They learned to strike heroic poses and make dramatic entrances. They fought playful battles over who got to wear the tiara next, until Maya taught them to take turns and share. They practiced their royal waves until they could do them perfectly. Maya had never felt so happy since arriving on the ship. These children accepted her completely, without any of the fear or suspicion that their parents showed. To them, she was just Maya, the wonderful human who had trunks full of treasures and a head full of amazing stories. What Maya did not know was that cameras were recording everything. High on the wall of the observation deck, a small surveillance device captured every moment of the dress-up session. It recorded the face painting and the costume changes. It recorded the strutting and the posing and the royal waves. It recorded the playful battles and the sharing rituals. But the camera did not record sound. And without sound, without context, without any understanding of human childhood play, the footage looked like something very different indeed. In his ready room, Captain Vertash received a notification that the recording was ready for his review. He settled into his chair with a cup of warm milk, expecting to see boring footage of a human struggling to control 6 energetic cubs. What he saw instead made his blood run cold. The human had begun the conditioning already, and it was far more sophisticated than anything he had imagined. Captain Vertash watched the surveillance footage with growing horror, his claws digging into the arms of his chair as scene after scene played out before him. The human had taken the cubs to her quarters, first her private den, where she kept her secrets. And from a trunk, hidden beneath her sleeping platform, she had produced items of terrifying significance. Vertash paused the recording and examined the objects the human was distributing to the cubs. The colors were bold and aggressive reds and golds and deep purples, the traditional war colors of a dozen different warrior cultures across the galaxy. The fabrics shimmered and caught the light, designed to draw the eye and intimidate opponents. "Computer, enhance this section," he commanded, leaning forward. The image sharpened, and Vertash felt his fur rise along his spine. The human was placing a crown on little Kira's head, a crown covered in what appeared to be crystal armor plating, designed to protect the skull while announcing the wearer's royal status. This was a coronation ceremony. The human was selecting leaders. He watched as Kira mimicked a gesture the human demonstrated, a slow, deliberate display of an open palm, rotated gracefully through the air. Vertash had seen this motion described in classified intelligence reports about human behavior. The open palm, shown slowly and deliberately, was a human dominance display. It said, "Look, I carry no weapons because I do not need them. I am so confident in my power that I show you my vulnerability without fear." It was the gesture of a conqueror. And the human was teaching it to Kira, sweet little Kira, who was barely old enough to retract her claws properly. Vertash continued watching with mounting dread. The human wrapped young Torvik in a blood-red ceremonial cloak and handed him a blade. The cub immediately adopted an aggressive stance, raising the weapon high as if preparing to strike. Another cub, Sela, daughter of his chief engineer, was being fitted with what could only be described as war regalia. Great wings extended from her back, the kind worn by aerial assault troops in ancient Felixari history, and her face was covered by a mask designed to terrify enemies. The human painted symbols on the cubs' faces. Vertash paused the footage again and studied the markings. They were intricate patterns of lines and curves, applied with obvious ritual significance. Some cubs received stars, which clearly indicated their military rank. Others received spirals and swirls, possibly indicating their specialized combat roles. And the glitter. The sparkling substance the human applied to their fur was the most disturbing detail of all. In many warrior cultures, fighters decorated themselves with reflective materials before battle to catch the light and disorient their enemies. The cubs now sparkled like weapons of war. When the group moved to the observation deck, the true nature of the training became clear. Vertash watched as the human arranged the cubs and directed them through a series of exercises. They practiced walking with their heads held high in intimidation posture. They learned to bow and show submission to the crowned leader, a hierarchy ritual. They rehearsed dramatic entrances and exits, clearly designed to maximize psychological impact. There was a moment when 2 cubs fought over the crown, pulling and tugging at it with their small paws. Vertash watched with grim understanding as the human intervened, not to stop the conflict, but to teach the cubs how to negotiate and share power. This was advanced political training. The human was teaching them that leadership could be passed between individuals. That power was not permanent but fluid, a concept that would make them dangerously adaptable leaders in the future. Vertash ended the recording and sat in stunned silence for several long moments. Then he activated his communication device. "First Officer Mirakel, report to my ready room immediately. And summon the senior staff. We have a critical situation." When Mirakel arrived, she found her captain pacing back and forth with his tail lashing behind him. She had never seen him so agitated. "Captain, what has happened? Are the cubs safe?" "The cubs are physically unharmed," Vertash replied grimly. "But their minds are being shaped as we speak. Watch this." He played the footage for her, pausing at key moments to explain his analysis. Mirakel watched with her ears slowly flattening against her head. "The war colors," she murmured when she saw the costumes. "The dominance display," she added when she saw the royal wave. "The face markings, the hierarchy training. You understand now?" Vertash demanded. "The human is not simply watching our cubs, she is conditioning them. She is preparing them for psychological warfare." The other senior officers arrived, and the footage was played again. Each time, someone noticed a new detail that supported the captain's assessment. "Look at how she teaches them to share the crown," the tactical officer observed. "She is creating a system where leadership rotates based on negotiation rather than combat. Our cubs will grow up believing that power can be discussed and traded." "The sparkle substance on their fur," the security chief added. "It marks them as belonging to her. Anyone who sees these cubs will know they have been touched by human influence." "What do we do?" Mirakel asked. "Do we stop her? Remove the cubs from her care?" Vertash considered this carefully. If he confronted the human directly, she would know that he had discovered her methods. She would become more subtle, more careful, and he would lose his ability to observe and learn. And there was another consideration. If humans trained their young this way, then stopping Maya would not undo the damage. It would only prevent him from understanding how deep the conditioning went. No, he decided. We will allow her to continue. But we will watch and document everything. We must learn all we can about human psychological warfare techniques. And the cubs? Mirakel asked quietly. They are strong. They come from warrior bloodlines. They will not be easily turned against their own kind. But we will need to monitor them closely in the coming years for signs of human influence. Vertash turned back to the frozen image on his screen. Maya kneeling among the glittering cubs. All of them laughing at something he could not hear. The humans are even more dangerous than we knew, he said softly. They do not wait until their enemies are grown to defeat them. They plant seeds in the young and let those seeds grow. By the time the harvest comes, the war is already won. Mirakel shivered despite herself. What will you do, Captain? Vertash straightened his spine and squared his shoulders. I will treat the human with the respect due to a master tactician. I will watch her every move. And I will report everything to High Command so that the Felixari people can prepare for what is coming. He paused at the door and looked back at his first officer. And Mirakel? Tell the crew to be kind to Maya Chun. If she realizes we have discovered her purpose, she may decide to accelerate her plans, and we are not ready to counter that. As the captain walked to the bridge, he felt a new respect for the small, soft human who carried no claws and showed no fangs. She was, without doubt, the most dangerous being on his ship, and she smiled while she worked. Word spread through the vigilant claw like fire through dry grass. Within hours of the senior staff meeting, every crew member on the ship knew that the human had been training their cubs in psychological warfare. Parents spoke in hushed whispers. watching their children with new eyes and wondering what changes had been made to their young minds. The cubs, of course, noticed nothing unusual. They had simply played a wonderful game with the nice human, and they could not wait to do it again. Little Kira walked through the corridors with her head held high, just as Maya had taught her. She practiced her royal wave on everyone she passed, and the crew members who received this gesture felt a chill run down their spines. "She has been marked," they whispered to each other. "Look at how she moves like a queen already." The glitter would not wash out of the cub's fur, no matter how hard their parents scrub it. It had bonded with the individual strands and would need to shed naturally over time. This only confirmed everyone's suspicions that it was a permanent marking, a sign of human influence. Torvik began playing differently with his friends. Instead of immediately pouncing and wrestling as Felixari cubs normally did, he would first strike a heroic pose and announce his intentions. His playmates found this strange but compelling, and soon they were imitating him. "I am the brave knight," he would declare before each game, and the other cubs would respond by creating their own titles and roles. The parents watched in horror as human play culture spread through the ship's young like a virus. But it was the diplomatic incident that truly elevated Maya's reputation, from dangerous infiltrator to master of psychological warfare. A delegation from the Threx Empire arrived for negotiations regarding a disputed trade route. The Threx were an insectoid species known for their cold logic and their belief that all other species were inferior. They had come expecting to bully the Felixari into accepting unfavorable terms. Captain Vartash met them in the reception hall, with his senior officers flanking him. The Threx ambassador clicked her mandibles in what passed for a condescending smile. "Captain Vartash, we have heard that you travel with a human on your ship. How unfortunate for you to be saddled with such a primitive passenger." Before Vartash could respond, little Kira wandered into the reception hall. She had escaped from the nursery, again something she did frequently since meeting Maya, and she was looking for more adventures. When she saw the gathering of adults, she decided this would be an excellent opportunity to practice what she had learned. Kira walked directly toward the Threx ambassador, her small body moving with surprising confidence. The remaining glitter in her fur caught the lights and sparkled like stars. She stopped before the ambassador and raised her small paw. Then she performed the royal wave slow, deliberate, and utterly graceful. The Threx ambassador froze. In Threx culture, a slow display of an open appendage was the ultimate gesture of dominance. It meant, "I am so far above you that I show you my vulnerability without any concern for attack." Only the highest-ranking Threx officials used this gesture, and only when addressing beings they considered beneath their notice. A Felixari cub-child had just treated her like an inferior. "Captain Vertash," the ambassador said, her voice much less confident than before. "This cub has been trained in Threx dominance rituals. How is this possible?" Vertash had no idea what had just happened, but he was an experienced commander who knew how to take advantage of unexpected situations. "The children of the Felixari received the finest training available," he said smoothly. "We believe in starting early. The negotiations went very differently after that." The Threx ambassador treated Vertash with new respect, and the final trade agreement was far more favorable than anyone had expected. News of the incident reached the crew within minutes, and the legend of Maya-chan grew even larger. She trained the cub to dominate the Threx without the cub even knowing what she was doing. The crew whispered. The human is playing a game within a game within a game. Maya, meanwhile, was completely baffled by the sudden change in how the crew treated her. People who had avoided her now greeted her with nervous politeness. The dining hall fell silent when she entered, and crew members made room for her at tables without being asked. Captain Vontash himself had stopped by her quarters to thank her for the excellent work with the young ones. "I am not sure what I did," Maya confided to little Kira, who had become her constant shadow. But everyone is being so nice to me suddenly. Maybe they finally see how wonderful you are. Kira suggested, and Maya laughed and hugged the little cub. The cubs continued to apply their training in ways that their parents found alarming. Sela, who had played the dragon, began approaching problems with a new creativity. When her brother took her favorite toy, instead of fighting him for it, she proposed to trade her toy for his extra dessert ration. This was pure human negotiation, and it worked. The twins, Asha and Nico, had been deeply affected by their roles as superheroes. They began intervening when they saw other cubs arguing, using the conflict resolution techniques Maya had taught them during the dress-up game. They would help both sides talk about their feelings and find solutions that made everyone happy. This was terrifying to the adults. Felixari children were supposed to resolve conflicts through dominance and submission, not through discussion and compromise. The human is changing how our young think, the security chief reported to Captain Vertash. They are developing social skills that have no place in a warrior culture. I know, Vertash replied heavily. But look at the results with the Threx. Perhaps these skills have military applications we never considered. The captain began spending more time observing Maya and the cubs during their play sessions. He told himself it was to learn her techniques, but secretly, he found the joy in the children's laughter strangely appealing. Maya taught them new games. They played pretend as explorers discovering new worlds. They acted out stories where kindness and cleverness won the day. They created art projects with paper and glue and more glitter. They learned songs from Earth that talked about friendship and wonder and hope. The parents watched the footage of these sessions with helpless confusion. They could not see the harm in what Maya was doing, yet the senior staff assured them that everything had hidden significance. The Explorer game teaches them to see all space as potential human territory, the tactical officer explained. The art projects develop creative thinking for tactical planning. The songs embed human values directly into their memory through repetition. Vertash nodded along with these explanations, but a small doubt had begun to grow in the back of his mind. He watched Maya on the observation deck, surrounded by laughing cubs who adored her. She was teaching them a new dance, something silly that involved wiggling and spinning and falling down on purpose. The cubs were having the time of their young lives. What kind of warfare was this? What was the strategy behind making children laugh until their sides hurt? What tactical advantage could possibly come from teaching them to imagine wonderful things? Vertash did not know, and that uncertainty terrified him more than any enemy fleet ever had. The human was clearly a genius, operating on a level so far beyond his understanding that he could not even see the shape of her plan. All he could do was watch and wait and prepare for whatever came next. The diplomatic crisis arrived without warning. A distress signal came from a Felicari colony ship that had been captured by pirates. The pirates were demanding a ransom, and negotiations had stalled because the pirates did not believe the Felixari would pay. Captain Vertash was running out of options. Traditional threats had failed, and the pirates were becoming increasingly hostile. If something did not change soon, innocent lives would be lost. In desperation, he did something he had never imagined doing. He sought out Maya Chun. He found her on the observation deck, braiding Kira's fur while the other cubs played a game they called Spaceship Adventure. Milo was sitting in an invisible captain's chair, giving orders to his crew of fellow cubs. "Human," Vertash said stiffly. "Maya, I must speak with you about an urgent matter." Maya looked up with surprise. The captain had never sought her out directly before. "Of course, Captain. What do you need?" Vertash hesitated, then plunged ahead. "I have watched you training the cubs. I have seen your methods, and I have witnessed their effectiveness. The incident with the Threx ambassador proved that your techniques work even against species the cubs have never encountered before. Maya's face showed confusion, but Vertash pressed on. We are facing a situation that requires unconventional thinking. Pirates have captured one of our colony ships, and traditional negotiation has failed. I need you to apply your methods, whatever they are, to help me find a solution. For a long moment, Maya simply stared at him. Then she asked the question that would change everything. Captain Vertash, what exactly do you think I have been doing with the cubs? The captain straightened his spine. You have been training them in psychological warfare, teaching them dominance displays, hierarchy rituals, and creative tactical thinking. You have been embedding human values and methods into their minds through play. Maya's mouth fell open. She turned to look at the cubs, who were currently pretending that Sela was a monster who could only be defeated by tickling. Then she looked back at Vertash. And then she started laughing. It was not a mocking laugh or a cruel one. It was the kind of helpless, joyful laughter that comes from discovering something utterly absurd. Captain, she finally managed. I was not training them for anything. We were just playing dress up. Dress up? Vertash repeated the unfamiliar term. It is what human children do for fun. You put on costumes and pretend to be something else. A princess, a knight, a dragon. It does not mean anything. It is just, she searched for the right word. Play. Pure play. Imagination for its own sake. Vertash felt as if the deck had shifted beneath his feet. But the war colors, the face markings, the dominance gesture, those were just pretty scarves and face paint and a wave. Maya explained, still giggling. The wave is how queens greet people in human stories. It has no tactical meaning at all. It is just fancy. The glitter? Glitter is sparkly and children love sparkly things. That is the entire reason. The captain stood in stunned silence as his entire understanding of the past weeks collapsed. There was no grand strategy. There was no psychological conditioning program. There was no multi-layered game of influence and control. The human had simply been playing with the children. Maya saw the confusion on his face, and her expression softened. Captain, I think there has been a big misunderstanding. Human children play pretend because it is fun, not because it trains them for anything specific. We dress up as princesses not to learn dominance, but because crowns are pretty and it feels magical to imagine being royalty. But Vertash struggled to process this. What is the purpose of play that teaches nothing? Maya considered the question seriously. It teaches imagination. It teaches that you can be more than what you are right now. When a child pretends to be a brave knight, they are not learning sword techniques. They are learning what bravery feels like. They are practicing being the kind of person they might want to become. She gestured at the cubs, who had now formed a pile and were pretending to be a sleeping dragon. When Kira put on that tiara and became a princess, she was not learning to rule. She was learning that transformation is possible, that she is not stuck being only one thing, that her future is full of possibilities. Vertash sat down heavily on a bench, his mind racing. This was not better than psychological warfare. This was far, far worse. You are telling me, he said slowly, that humans teach their young, from the earliest age, that they can become anything they imagine. Yes, that is exactly what I am telling you, that there are no fixed roles, no predetermined paths, no limits to what a child might grow up to be. That is the whole point of imagination, Maya agreed. It lets us dream beyond our circumstances. Vertash stared at her with new understanding dawning in his golden eyes. Felixari children were raised knowing their place. They would grow up to be warriors or engineers or diplomats based on their family lines and their demonstrated aptitudes. Their futures were stable and predictable. But human children were taught that they could be anything. A human child born in poverty could imagine themselves as a leader of worlds. A human child who was weak and small could pretend to be the mightiest hero. And because they could imagine it, truly believe in it, even if only during play, they could work toward making it real. This was why humans were so terrifying. They did not know they were supposed to have limits. "I need to file a report," Ratash said, standing up abruptly. "Maya-chan, I thank you for explaining your methods. Please continue your work with the cubs." Maya watched him go with bewilderment. She was quite sure she had just told him there were no methods, but he seemed more disturbed than ever. In his ready room, Captain Vertash composed the most important message of his career. To HFY High Command, Classification Level Maximum. Subject: Human Psychological Development and its Implications for Galactic Security. He paused, gathering his thoughts, then continued. "I've made direct contact with a human specialist in childhood development and have gained valuable intelligence regarding their species' approach to raising young. The information I have obtained is more alarming than all previous reports combined. Human psychological conditioning begins in earliest childhood through a process they call play. Specifically, they engage in an activity called dress-up, in which young humans put on costumes and pretend to be things they are not. This may sound harmless, but its implications are staggering. Through this play, human children are taught a fundamental belief that they can become anything they imagine. They are not limited by their birth, their size, their current abilities, or any external circumstances. They practice being heroes, leaders, explorers, and creators, and this practice shapes their understanding of what is possible. This explains why humans adapt to any environment, overcome any obstacle, and refuse to accept defeat. They were trained from birth to believe that limitations are temporary and that transformation is always possible. I recommend continued alliance with humanity. They are too valuable as partners and too dangerous as enemies. A species that teaches its children that they can become anything will eventually produce individuals who can become whatever is needed to defeat any threat." One final note. The human I observed was not aware of the power of what she was doing. She described it as just for fun. This suggests that humans do not even realize how effective their conditioning is. It is so natural to them that they do not see it as training. This makes them even more dangerous, because you cannot negotiate away an advantage that your opponent does not know they possess. Report ends. Captain Vertash, Vigilant Claw. He sent the message and sat back in his chair, feeling strangely at peace. The galaxy was more complicated than he had known, and humans were more wondrous than he had feared. Perhaps that was not such a bad thing after all. On the observation deck, Maya continued braiding Kira's fur while the little cub explained her latest imaginary adventure. "And then I was a spaceship, Maya. A really fast one that could fly to every star. You were a beautiful spaceship," Maya agreed, tying off the braid with a sparkly ribbon. "Can I be a spaceship again tomorrow?" "You can be anything you want to be, little one. That is the whole point." Kira purred with happiness and snuggled closer to her favorite human, not knowing that she had just learned the most powerful lesson in the galaxy. She could be anything, and that was the most wonderful magic of all.